Kick off summer with Memorial Day savings at Lowe's. Right now, get 5 Scott's Naturescapes 1.5 cubic foot mulch bags for just $10. Plus, get up to 40% off select major appliances and save an extra $50 on every $500 you spend on select major appliances $396 or more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/28. Mulch offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
Hashtag no music, no intro. We are back. Saints Block Party Podcast here with the incredible Jane Slater of NFL Network. It finally is happening. The Saints Block Party Podcast episode with Jane Slater. Thank you for joining us, and it's happening. We were just talking some Kevin Garrett concert tea, even though not really tea, before hopping on and joining. But speaking of tea, speaking of gossip, speaking of toxicness, we're talking about the Saints, and not a better team to talk about using those adjectives than talking about the Saints. You were at the draft, you covered them in April. We're trying to set something up and talking about them, but a lot has happened since the draft, and when you covered them and covered them for the draft till now, Derek Carr retiring. Just overall, just what's your sense has been with this team this last month and a half of how things have gone for them?
You know, it's so interesting. I was beginning to get the sense that we were not going to see Carr again. I didn't know how that was going to play out, whether he was going to allow for a recovery with this shoulder injury, and then that was going to sort of loom over the building and be uncomfortable. I didn't see him necessarily coming to New Orleans and coaching up this young group. It felt like this thing wasn't moving in the direction of quarterbacks that I've covered who have gotten injured and are your marquee franchise quarterback. This one was moving differently. But what was also interesting was how tight-lipped everyone was being around that building. I mean, I think I said it when I did Insiders 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I've covered anything like this in my 10 years at NFL Network. And mind you, I covered Dak Prescott and Tony Romo when Tony Romo passed the torch to Dak Prescott without the coaching staff saying, hey, we told you to do that. That was an odd one when I covered that whole deal and how that went down. But, you know, I'll say this about the Saints, whether you like it or not, they try to handle things from a class and a family perspective. And I think sometimes that is frustrating to the fans because when they handle it that way, it seemingly hurts the business. And so I say that as gently as I can because, you know, I do know Gail Benson very well. I've gotten to know her over the last couple of years, and we've got an incredible relationship. And so this is not me tiptoeing around because technically she's one of my bosses at NFL Network. I've truly appreciated getting to know Gail, and she does move different than a lot of owners. With that being said, though, Jerry Jones moves in the same way, just with I think, a sharper tongue, and he negotiates a little bit more out in public than she does. But the way they handle these things, they do see their players as almost family, and I think I appreciate that. But I think as a fan, it can be very, very frustrating if you can't see behind the curtain the way that I have, the way that they move. And so I don't want it to sound like I'm, you know, massaging this. I got the sense there was some frustration in that building. There was definitely frustration. They're not going to say it publicly. Nope. They don't handle things that well. But I think this was sort of an egg in the face for, I think, you know, Mickey Loomis and some of the folks who put their neck out there and said, this is the guy we're going all in on. And so credit to Carr for also handling this with class and saying, I'm not going to anchor this organization down because this is no longer where I want to be and where I feel comfortable playing next year, whether that is in retirement, whether that is in rehab. But he didn't have to give that money back. Now, I have seen some things percolating on the internet that maybe Mickey Loomis is a little bit smarter than some of us were giving him credit for. And he had, information that might contradict some of the things that Carr was saying. And so I don't know if we'll ever know those things because of how they operate down there, but that does seem to make more sense as it all came out in the wash than when it first came out, going just, oh, everyone played really nice here. Like, that
Right.
was really
Yeah.
cool.
And I, oh man.
But I'm glad they did it when they did it, though, right, guys? Like,
Right.
at
Right.
the end of the day, when I reported this thing's going to happen sooner rather than later, good on them for identifying this before the draft so that you could go out and draft a quarterback. Now, I know the
Right.
Saints fans are still pissed because they'd rather see Shador Sanders over Tyler Shuck. I mean, we can get into that.
Right.
But credit to them for at least announcing that so they knew, hey, this is a high priority for the second round. And then credit to them for figuring this out as the rookies are getting into rookie minicamp and
Yep.
ahead of OTAs. Because especially if you're a first year coach like Kellen Moore, you don't want that looming over you either. It's a dark cloud when
Mhm.
you have those things. I saw it in Dallas when Dak Prescott came in as a fourth round pick and then watched Dak Prescott galvanize the locker room. The guys loved Dak. When Tony Romo came back, he was healed and expecting to play again. But that locker room, the way they rode for Dak Prescott, was
Wow.
so different that they were forced to, as Jerry put it, go with the hot hand. And it was so uncomfortable. Like, in fact, Tony Romo even flew to Green Bay. I don't know if I've ever put this out there. He flew to Green Bay, and instead of flying back with the team after Dak won that game, his rookie season, he flew back with Jerry Jones and the family on the jet. And that did not sit well with a lot of the team. And so I think you could have had a situation like that with Carr, where he would have flown with Mrs. B, come back, and then can you see the way Alvin Kamara or Cam Jordan or those guys would have handled that?
Yeah.
So I've seen it get weird and I've seen it get uncomfortable. And this was the best case scenario, the way this thing played out. So a lot of the Saint fans, that may not make you feel good. You may be annoyed, but I think all of us at the end of the day, we just want closure on things.
Yeah.
And we've got some closure.
Yes.
No question. And I mean, honestly, I think most Saints fans are just happy to turn the page and start fresh and new. Saints have been kind of stuck in this kind of mid rut for the longest. And who knows what happens with Tyler Stuck, Spencer Rattler, Kellen Moore, and all that. But at least it's like a fresh start. So I think
Yes.
people are just kind of excited to see that. It was interesting when you put that report out. I don't know, last week or the week before. You look, you're the first person to really come out and say this is stemming from the Giants game last year where he got hurt doing a dive. He landed on his left hand, broke his left hand, rehab that, and then it's like, oh, all of a sudden the right shoulder, and then you provided context that hey, he started ramping up working out in March, shoulder wasn't right, boom. So it was funny how the story just progressively started, little
To
pieces of the
fill in a
puzzle
little
started
bit.
coming together, and
Did you
then
guys
it was
watch the video though of that injury? Because when I first was being told that in that game he came down on the left hand and that's how he fractured it and then
yeah,
hurt the throwing shoulder, I was like, well, how? If you
right,
go back and watch the video, guys,
the
you do
ball,
see it.
yeah,
But my frustration and argument was, well, why didn't you start throwing or getting a sense of that shoulder sooner
right,
than March? And why was the only time that you were throwing the ball around was with, I was told it wasn't even like a real football. It was like a softer ball, and it was
yeah,
more of like a walkthrough with the guys and Alvin Kamara. So it was like, and so I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I was told, well, that's because they essentially benched the players towards the end of the year. And okay. And then I was, and again, another layer of this, I was told, well, if you open up any shoulder of a QB at a certain age, you'll see something that needs to be worked on.
Sure.
So
hmm
did he use that as as his like sort of bargaining chip here. Again, I don't know.
Don't know.
It's
Don't
so
know.
it's so fascinating.
I had a pretty good source on this though, and I will say that in my conversations with this person, it did feel authentic in the sense that he'd had surgery on the shoulder before. He didn't feel comfortable playing with it, and as a result, wanted time. And it sounded like the Saints didn't want to give a lot of time. They wanted some sort of resolution. And so I think when Carr was maybe feeling pressured to get surgery or have a resolution, and it seems like maybe he didn't necessarily want to come back or it wasn't a fit, I think that's when I think that makes the most sense out of all the things.
Yeah. And we try to, we try to don't get into like the speculation business. But I was having this conversation in a group chat with Jordan Rodriguez and Greg Rosenthal in the group chat, because I won't say it's a theory, because I think it's also well sourced, of kind of how you alluded to, like the Saints had information of maybe this injury potentially happened. I'm just going to say non-football related, and it maybe was going to get into a situation where arbitration was
litigation and
arbitration was getting involved. And so maybe both sides saw this as an opportunity of, all right, man, here's $10 million. Keep it. We'll do. I equated it of like an amicable marital settlement. Like,
well, and not only that, it's like, we've also got to talk about, there is like, I want to be careful here.
Yep.
I don't want to use the word negligence, but because a lot of teams don't do this when you essentially when you move the money down the line, right? And you do the extension. Were they not putting eyeballs on the injury before this?
Thank you.
No, so
oh my God, we have been screaming that. Like, will you guarantee $40 million when someone just had an injury in January? Like, maybe you want to give that person a physical.
And I haven't been able to get confirmation on. It sounds like teams don't have to do that. Not every team does that, but I think if we all look in the mirror, if you want to use the marriage, resolution, it's like because I've gone through divorce. You've got to
Me too. Twinsies.
Yeah, you've almost kind of got to look in the mirror and go, all right, how did we get here? We've all been mad at each other, but like, how do we just walk away from this and, learn from the experience, but not carry this hate with us? Right. And so I think that's kind of how this whole thing went down, was if you really looked in the mirror, both sides probably didn't handle this the way that they were supposed to. And it was just best to walk away and move on. And I think for Kellen Moore, it's best for him to get his guy in the building and start, because, a lot of people, Kellen Moore, New Orleans is different, y'all. Of all the locker rooms that I cover, there is a culture aspect. That's why I didn't think Carr fit into that locker room. When I heard that Carr was coming to New Orleans, that made zero sense to me. Just like Russell Wilson makes zero sense to me in New Orleans.
Can you talk about why you didn't think that Derek Carr fit into the New Orleans locker room? Just expand on that a little bit.
Let's be honest. Drew Brees never really felt like he would have been a fit, but I think he leaned into New Orleans, and he leaned into the culture, and he leaned into what that city meant to people. I never really got the sense that Carr leaned into the culture, the people. Like, Cam Jordan Day is a day because of the way Cam Jordan leans into that community. The reason why Jameis Winston could have come back and been your starter this year and lost, I think, pretty much every game. And the city would have still loved and embraced him, because I was just there at Super Bowl. He was at Lafitte filming something. And that guy is just so, what you see is what you get. He's authentic. He loves up on that locker room like he was a part of the group. And so I never felt like Carr was that guy.
So I'm so glad you said that, because I try to tell people it wasn't so much about the wins, losses, and field performance, because it was okay. I was fine. That wasn't the thing with Saints fans. It was everything else.
And look, and I'm not trying to make this a white-black thing either. I want to make this very, very clear. I don't think it's a white quarterback. That's
Not
not
at
what I'm
all.
saying when I say culture, but I'm saying like if you're a white quarterback and you come to New Orleans, you better have a little swag to you. You better like an extra spicy gumbo. You better, you got to get out there, at Mardi Gras. Like there is a vibe. And I think that's why I love New Orleans so much. Like Tyrann Mathieu comes in and like he embodies New Orleans. And I think Tyler Shuck's giving you a little bit of that when he's coming
Sure
in
is.
here,
I mean,
like,
Sure is.
at least Shuck appears. Mystic sounds bad about Carr. At least Shuck appears just likable. Like
yeah.
that probably
Yeah.
sounds a little bad. I mean, but like he just seems like a likable person.
I
And I
think
Hmm.
Jackson Dart would have been very interesting for y'all in New
I
Orleans
think
if
so
he
too.
had
Yeah.
been
that
there.
that
That
that chain
confidence, that
that that
Oh
that
yeah.
swag.
cha- that chain. Anyway, don't get me started.
But I think personality match with Kellen Moore that I don't know because
Yeah.
Kellen's got a little bit of a different personality, y'all. And like, I'll be
Please
honest,
tell me.
I
what
looked at
what
Kellen Moore and I'm like, is that the fit? Because Sean is another one. Sean kind of leaned into New Orleans culture.
Exactly.
And so am I gonna see Kellen Moore with like his Air Force Ones? Like, am I gonna like,
Absolutely not. You know that's not gonna
I'm
happen.
like,
Well,
but I will say this about Kellen. There's a little bit more there than you guys sometimes see. I actually put out
I was wondering that.
I put out a video of him when he did Gruden's QB camp back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see that little like he's got a little bit of an edge there. And
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
even in Dallas, like Dallas, I think is a place where they'll kind of see through your BS pretty quick.
Mm.
And the way that Dak and Dez and all those guys would be like, I F with Kellen. Like, Kellen's got something to him, but you're gonna like it's for lack of a better word, it feels like a vanilla wafer up there. Like it
Right.
just does. But
Yes.
there is a little bit more to him. So I would just say give him a chance because I think it's more of the way he just embraces the game and the X's and
Mm.
O's. I mean, he made it work in Philadelphia. Like if you can make it work, because Philadelphia's locker room is like you've got to bring a little something to
Something.
it.
Right.
He's always been there.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. I'm not saying you guys are out of the woods. I'm
Oh.
not saying that you guys are, making a run at the championship anytime soon. But what I would say is I think you guys are building in the right direction. And I think it's important that Kellen's getting the pieces and the personnel around him to move on and help turn the page.
No, I'm so glad you talked about that with Kelly because every time I see an interview with people talking about him, it's like, no, Kellen, he has something to him. I was like, where? Like, I watch these persons and it's just like, put me to sleep. And you talking about somebody who watched like every Sean Payton person that he ever did. And Sean, Sean just had something about him. He had a little swag to
Man.
him,
Well, it was an
and,
ego. Like Sean's
and an
got
ego.
an ego.
It doesn't fit in the
You go
room.
up there and like, the stuff that
Yeah.
he would say, you'd be like, oh my God.
You get
And
entranced.
I always say like if Sean Payton was a coach for another team, you'd hate him, but
Oh,
when
you
it's your
couldn't,
team, you
couldn't
love him.
stand them.
But
But he
but
could run for mayor in that city, Like I've
right
always
now,
said, like I'm waiting for the day that he goes and finds a bunch of heavy hitters. And I'm not saying this is Gil Benson will have a long life, but she said that when she sells the team, all the money goes to city. I'm like, I wonder if he would go and find a bunch of investors, as best he's Wayne
Mm.
Gretzky and all those guys, and try to come back but because I think he does feel you know, even though he's in Denver, like he was so emotional when he came back, and the Saints were so beaten up in that game, and that's when Spencer started and Bo Nix, and you could tell he was, he's so competitive. He wanted to win it, but it was like really, he was like in a daze when he came down the tunnel that day. It was just, it was
Mm.
really emotional for him.
It's one of the sliding door moments, and I wonder because from what I heard, like that the last season he had in New Orleans took a lot out of him, but I also heard that like the relationship with him and Mickey Loomis had really deteriorated towards the end too, and he really kind of needed
I think, I think it's Mickey and him are kind of like I don't know if you guys have like a best friend that you're just always like they're your best friend. They're as close as like a sister or a brother. but you're just always like this. That's him and Mickey.
Yep.
But like when
Yeah.
I say the love and respect for each other goes deep, and I think they've been trying to navigate what life looks like without each
Without
other.
each
You know,
other.
Mickey's trying to prove himself, and I think hates any assertion that he's following any blueprint of Sean's, and vice versa, right? And so I think they're trying to, navigate. But I think Sean wanting to leave New Orleans, I think he was really, really frustrated with some of the lack of calls that were coming his way. I think he felt like,
Mm.
would some of these things happen if he was in Dallas, or would some of these things happen if he was in New York? I think there was a frustration. I mean, even when I cover the Saints, I mean, living here in Texas, regionally, the Saints are such a big team. But
Right.
nationally, the Saints just don't do numbers. I mean, people are always like, why aren't you in New Orleans covering the Saints more? And I'm like, for our network, it just doesn't do the numbers that some of these bigger market teams do. And I think Sean, giving his ego, and as he was getting up there in age, I think he wanted to do what a lot of coaches at the time really hadn't done, and that is go to multiple places and win a Super Bowl. And
Mm.
so I think it was his ego that motivated him wanting to check a box, and less with a frustration or a distaste for New Orleans. I mean, he still has a place in New
Oh
Orleans.
yeah, he
Yeah.
loves. Yeah, he loves the city.
Kick off summer with Memorial Day savings at Lowe's. Right now, get 5 Scott's Naturescapes 1.5 cubic foot mulch bags for just $10. Plus, get up to 40% off select major appliances and save an extra $50 on every $500 you spend on select major appliances $396 or more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/28. Mulch offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
But
Anything else you have for this? Is great. I
no,
know
this is
Ryan.
this is great. Like this was like this, you hit on some points that I really wanted to hit on, especially Kellen Moore, because one thing we've been trying to figure out is like who is Kellen Moore? It's hashtag who is Kellen? Like even from an offensive standpoint, because it seems like everywhere he's been, he's like pulled a little bit from what's already there and kind of messed with his own. So it's like finally now it's his own. Like what is that going to look like?
Yours.
Well, I think he draws a lot of inspiration from the college game. Like, I would hear things like how he would be watching certain tape late at night and, see something and want to bring it in, to the meetings. And I think, like, remember in Dallas, that's the year we had the 1,000 yard receivers. The big frustration, and it'll be interesting to see how this shifts, because when you look at Philadelphia, it was different. In Dallas, the knock on Kellen was that he wasn't running the ball enough,
12 month.
that
Yep.
they were just throwing it all over the place. Like, they had gaudy stats. I think they had a top 5 offense like 3 years in a row. Um, number 1 offense, I think 2 of those years, but they weren't running the ball. But then in Philadelphia, you've got Saquon Barkley. Like, you're going to have to use Saquon Barkley. So I think everyone
Right.
wants to, the way it's been described to me when I talk to some of these coaches and offensive coordinators, you want to pin a coach and say, this is what their offense looks like. But you're only as good as the personnel. And
Right.
so I think with a guy like Alvin Kamara, like, obviously you're going to want to run the ball, but I'd love to see Juwan Johnson get in the game more. I'd love to see Chris Olave, like, poor Chris Olave. Let's
Oh
see if like he can have the
no,
year that
he's
I think Olave is capable of, and Rashid, some of those guys. And so I think he's gonna love having some of those players at his disposal. Rashid is still there, right?
Yep,
yes,
yep.
he is
I'm
coming
like,
He's
things
coming
coming
are
off
off
changing a
injury.
lot in New Orleans.
No,
coming
yeah.
off his torn, was it meniscus? Yeah, coming
Meniscus,
off
yeah,
his
I think so.
torn meniscus injury, but yeah, he's still there. This has been amazing. I think the ironic thing is you kind of reinforced a lot of things we've been saying on this podcast over like the last three plus years. So it was just refreshing to hear someone else say it that's not just us. But it's been great to just have you come on. Definitely have to give you.
I cheer for the Saints. I'm telling you, as a journalist, we're not supposed to obviously have favorites or teams, but
Is that
I
still
have
a thing?
never.
I feel like in 2025, like people, like journalists can like have like so many journalists like have a team.
Yes, but not when you cover them as a team reporter. But,
Fair enough.
when I was there, the year I thought the Saints were going all the way was that Rams no call game. And I was on the sidelines with Diana Rossini. That's when, no one would go cover the Saints. Like, they were considered toxic because Sean and Mickey hated the networks, and it was like us against them. And they didn't want anybody in New Orleans covering that team. I'll never forget telling Mickey Loomis once, "Hey, Mickey, like, I really enjoy covering the Saints. Everyone's so great down here." And he goes, "Don't get too comfortable."
Sounds about right.
Checks out.
I love our
100%.
relationship. Every time I see Mickey, it's like, but Rossini and I, we were fighting for at ESPN and NFL Network. Let us go cover them. Like, we're gonna get good access, and we're gonna tell good stories. And we were so excited. We're like, yeah, we leaned into the Saints, and look at this game. And when that no call happened, we were on the sidelines, and just it felt like the air got sucked out of a balloon inside the Superdome. And it's like, I don't feel like emotionally Sean, the fan base, or the team got past that one. It was one of those what might have been moments, not to mention when you guys might have gotten Tom Brady. That was real.
It's in a ironical, real, in a weird way. And Ryan and I have had this conversation. That moment completely changed my relationship with the team for the better, because prior to that moment, both Ryan and I were like typical fanatics when it came to the Saints, like live and die with every moment. And when they would lose, Mondays were terrible. Like we would be in terrible moods to like our spouses, like, oh, like don't talk, like, and like now, like we don't ride the wave. Like when they win, it's great. When they lose, it's like, all right, cool. Like
now you're a real journalist. Come to my side of the pond. The water's warmer, folks.
It's just, so we call it being emotionally detached from like your sports team, and it's
the only way to be.
Yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
we've preached it for like the last 5 years on the podcast of like, enjoy the wins, but when they lose, like you don't have to turn football off. Go watch Red Zone. Like you don't have to like shy away from like watching sports highlights. It's okay.
What is it? Russell Wilson subscribes to this whole mindset, and I had to like sort of apply this to my life in recent years, because I would ride the high highs and the low lows, and it's all this neutral thinking. And I'm like, man, come to the world of neutral thinking. It doesn't mean that you can't get excited about life, and it doesn't mean that you've got to be bummed about life, but you just kind of stay in neutral. And so, like, my dad is the type of guy, he's got like a flag for the Cowboys, the Longhorns. And the minute that team lose, I mean, that flag comes down, it ruins his day. I'm like, Dad, like, it ain't worth it, like.
No,
So
it's not.
Yeah, I'm always and trust me, I get it. When I grew up a Cowboys fan, like I'd cry when they'd lose and stuff. And now I'm like, once you see how the sausage is made, you're like,
That too. That's part of it too. Yeah. So it's a crushing moment, and it sucks, and
But I think it allows you to be more objective about your team, right?
Exactly.
Like I think it allows you to, when you're having arguments with friends, instead of having the most absurd argument, it's like, well, I mean, come on, like, they haven't won the division, and and it helps your expectations heading into the season. So when your expectations are here and they exceed your expectations, that feeling is so much better.
Listen, when they went to Dallas last week in week 2, I was at that game.
Beat the Cowboys. That was a huge game.
Listen, I was elated. Didn't have a voice for like 2 to 3 days after that. And
then
it was
what
amazing.
happened to Kubiak, man? I'm like, we were
my
all
God.
so high on Kubiak. I was trying to get a one-on-one with them. He was so in demand. And it's like, that's still a mystery I've got. Like, what happened with the whole Kubiak dynamic? And like, I thought, like, why isn't he heir apparent? Like, what happened there? I've got questions. That reminds me, I got to dig into that one.
He like flamed out like faster than Bobby Slovic. Like it was bad.
That's a great comp. Bobby was like riding a high too.
Yeah.
But the other thing is you guys had so many injuries. Like, I mean, it was, and people hate when you bring up the injuries, but it's like, y'all were literally a Cadillac. You were an older Cadillac already. and you were like loop-de-loop on one wheel, and next thing you know, like the engine's falling out, the air
Everything.
conditioning's not working,
Everything.
you've got a spare donut on the back two tires. It's like you can only do so much. Like you're not going to win a NASCAR race with that Cadillac.
No,
Right.
no. Last question before we let you go. Everyone like their Vegas win prediction is like 5.5. Do you feel like that's accurate? We're gonna do our schedule release episode tonight, and I would likely guess we're gonna probably have them picking under that. But
As an NFL Network employee, I
that's
cannot
right.
contribute to betting odds, but
No,
I would just say it's so hard to say. I think it would be, if I was a gambler, I think it would be so hard to gamble on the Saints this year, good or bad, because you don't know what you're getting from your
right,
offense. You don't really you've got so many new players that have come to this team, but at the same time, that division always feels very wide open. Like it always
right.
feels like you're in it and in the race. And so, like, I don't know if I love my money. I think I'm just staying away from
Yeah. Oh,
that one. That's just me.
Anything else for?
no. Let Jay go. You killed it though. I really appreciate it, man.
Of
That was
course, I
awesome.
am so sorry that you guys have had to wait on me. And like I said, I'll owe you another one during the season for your troubles.
Hey,
Hey,
don't hold you to it.
You should. Just
You
lie to
know
me and
something.
tell me it's
You know
like
what this
30 minutes
team.
earlier than what it is.
But you know what this team. Something's gonna happen. Like there's gonna be
100%.
something.
yeah,
Something. I don't know what
yeah.
it is.
Something will happen, but we appreciate you for coming on. That was
Of course.
amazing. And during the season, we'll have you on again after some trade or something that Saints related happens.
Whenever you
So
need me.
we appreciate you.
Y'all are the best.
Thank you so much. For y'all who listened or watched, we appreciate y'all. We'll be back later. With that, we are out.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.